The Grimm's Fairytales. Hans in Luck. Hans had served his master 7 years, and at last said to him, "Master, my time is up. I should like to go home and see my mother, so give me my wages." And the master said, "You have been a faithful and good servant, so your pay shall be handsome." Then he gave him a piece of silver that was as big as his head. Hans took out his pocket handkerchief, put the piece of silver into it, threw it over his shoulder, and jogged off homewards. As he went lazily on, dragging one foot after another, a man came in sight, trotting along gaily on a capital horse. "Ah," said Hans aloud, "what a fine thing it is to ride on horseback! There he sits as if he was at home in his chair. He trips against no stones, spare his shoes, and yet gets on he hardly knows how." The horseman heard this and said, "Well, Hans, why do you go on foot then?" "Ah," said he, "I have this load to carry. To be sure it is silver, but it is so heavy that I can't hold up my head, and it hurts my shoulder sadly." "What do you say to changing?" said the horseman. "I will give you my horse, and you shall give me the silver." "With all my heart," said Hans, "but I tell you one thing. You'll have a weary task to drag along." The horseman got off, took the silver, helped Hans up, gave him the bridle into his hand, and said, "When you want to go very fast, you must smack your lips loud and cry, 'Jip!'" Hans was delighted, as he sat on the horse and rode merrily on. After a time he thought he should like to go on a little faster, so he smacked his lips and cried, "Jip!" Away went the horse full gallop, and before Hans knew what he was about, he was thrown off and lay in a ditch by the roadside, and his horse would have run off if a shepherd who was coming by, driving a cow, had not stopped it. Hans soon came to himself, and got upon his legs again. He was sadly vexed, and said to the shepherd, "This riding is no joke, when a man gets on a beast like this, that stumbles and flings him off as if he would his neck. However, I'm off now once for all. I like your cow a great deal better. One can walk along at one's leisure behind her, and have milk, butter, and cheese every day into the bargain. What I would give to have such a cow." "Well," said the shepherd, "if you are so fond of her, I will change my cow for your horse." "Done," said Hans merrily. The shepherd jumped upon the horse, and away he rode. Hans drove off his cow quietly, and thought his bargain a very lucky one. "If I have only a piece of bread, and I certainly shall be able to get that, I can, whenever I like, eat my butter and cheese with it, and when I am thirsty I can milk my cow and drink the milk. What can I wish for more?" When he came to an inn, he halted, ate up all his bread, and gave away his last penny for a glass of beer. Then he drove his cow towards his mother's village, and the heat grew greater as noon came on, till at last he found himself on a wide heath that would take him more than an hour to cross, and he began to be so hot and parched that his tongue clave to the roof of his mouth. "I can find a cure for this," thought he. "Now will I milk my cow and quench my thirst?" So he tied her to the stump of a tree and held his leathern cap to milk into it, but not a drop was to be had. While he was trying his luck and managing the matter very clumsily, the uneasy beast gave him a kick on the head that knocked him down, and there he lay a long while senseless. Luckily, a butcher soon came by driving a pig in the wheelbarrow. "What is the matter with you?" said the butcher as he helped him up. Hans told him what had happened, and the butcher gave him a flask, saying, "There, drink and refresh yourself. Your cow will give you no milk. She is an old beast, good for nothing but the slaughterhouse." "Alas, alas," said Hans, "who would have thought? If I kill her, what will she be good for? I hate cow beef. It is not tender enough for me. If it were a pig now, one could do something with it. It would at any rate make some sausages." "Well," said the butcher, "to please you, I'll change and give you the pig for the cow." "Heaven reward you for your kindness," said Hans, as he gave the butcher the cow, and took the pig off the wheelbarrow, and drove it off, holding it by the string that was tied to its leg. So on he jogged, and all seemed now to go right with him. He had met with some misfortunes, to be sure, but he was now well repaid for all. The next person he met was a countryman, carrying a fine white goose under his arm. The countryman stopped to ask what was o'clock, and Hans told him all his luck, and how he made him so many good bargains. The countryman said he was going to take the goose to a christening. "Feel," said he, "how heavy it is, and yet it is only 8 weeks old. Whoever roasts and eat it may cut plenty of fat off it. It has lived so well." "You're right," said Hans as he weighed it in his hand, "but my pig is no trifle." Meantime the countryman began to look grave and shook his head. "Hark ye," said he, "my good friend, your pig may get you into a scrape in the village I just come from. The squire has had a pig stolen out of his sty. I was dreadfully afraid when I saw you that you had got that squire's pig. It will be a bad job if they catch you. The least they'll do will be thrown to you into the horse pond." Poor Hans was sadly frightened. "Good man," cried he, "pray get me out of this scrape. You know this country better than I. Take my pig and give me the goose. I ought to have something into the bargain," said the countryman. "However, I will not bear hard upon you, as you are in trouble." Then he took the string in his hand and drove off the pig by a side path, while Hans went on the way, homewards free from care. "After all," thought he, "I have the best of the bargain. First there will be a capital roast, then the fat will find me in goose grease for 6 months, and then there are all the beautiful white feathers. I will put them into my pillow, and then I am sure I shall sleep soundly without rocking. How happy my mother will be." As he came to the last village, he saw a scissor grinder with his wheel, working away and singing, "O'er hill and o'er dale so happy I roam, work light and live well, all the world is my home. Why so blithe, so merry as I?" Hans stood looking for a while, and at last said, "You must be well off, Master Grinder, you seem so happy at your work." "Yes," said the other, "mine is a golden trade. A good grinder never puts his hand in his pocket without finding money in it." "But where did you get that beautiful goose?" "I did not buy it, but changed a pig for it." "And where did you get the pig?" "I gave a cow for it." "And the cow?" "I gave a horse for it." "And the horse?" "I gave a piece of silver as big as my head for that." "And the silver?" "Oh, I worked hard for that 7 long years." "You have thriven well in the world of Hitherto," said the grinder. "Now if you could find some money in your pocket, wherever you put your hand into it, your fortune would be made." "Very true, but how is that managed?" "You must turn grinder like me," said the other. "You only want a grindstone, the rest will come of itself. Here is one that is a little worse the wear. I would not ask any more than the value of your goose for it. Will you buy?" "How can you ask such a question?" replied Hans. "I should be the happiest man in the world if I could have any money whenever I put my hand in my pocket. What could I want more? There's the goose." "Now," said the grinder, as he gave him a common rough stone that lay by his side, "this is a most capital stone. Do but manage it cleverly, and you can make an old nail cut with it." Hans took the stone and went off with a light heart. His eyes sparkled for joy, and he said to himself, "I must have had born in a lucky hour. Everything I want or wish for comes to me of itself." Meantime, he began to be tired, for he had been traveling ever since daybreak. He was hungry too, for he had given away his last penny in his joy at getting the cow. At last he could go no further, and the stone tired him terribly. He dragged himself to the side of the pond, that he might drink some water and rest a while. So he laid the stone carefully by his side on the bank. But as he stooped down to drink, he forgot it, pushed it a little, and down it went plump into the pond. For a while he watched it sinking in the deep, clear water, then sprang up for joy and again fell upon his knees and thanked heaven with tears in his eyes for its kindness in taking away his only plague, the ugly, heavy stone. "How happy am I!" cried he. "No mortal was ever so lucky as I am." Then he got up with a light and merry heart and walked on free from all his troubles, till he reached his mother's house. The Traveling Musicians. An honest farmer had once an ass that had been a faithful servant to him a great many years, but was now growing old and every day more and more unfit for work. His master, therefore, was tired of keeping him and began to think of putting an end to him. But the ass, who saw that some mischief was in the wind, took himself slyly off and began his journey towards the great city. For there, thought he, I may turn musician. After he had traveled a little way, he spied a dog, lying by the roadside and panting as if he was very tired. What makes you pant so, my friend? Said the ass. Alas, said the dog, my master was going to knock me on the head, because I am old and weak and can no longer make myself useful to him in hunting, so I ran away. But what can I do to earn my livelihood? Hark ye, said the ass, I am going to the great city to turn musician. Suppose you go with me, and try what you can do in the same way. The dog said he was willing, and they jogged on together. They had not gone far beyond they saw a cat sitting in the middle of the road, and making a most rueful face. Pray, my good lady, said the ass, what's the matter with you? You look quite out of spirits. Ah me, said the cat, how can one be in good spirits when one's life is in danger? Because I am beginning to grow old and had rather lie at my ease by the fire than run about the house after the mice, my mistress laid hold of me and was going to drown me, and though I have been lucky enough to get away from her, I do not know what I am to live upon. Oh, said the ass, by all means go with us to the great city. You are a good night singer and may make your fortune as a musician. The cat was pleased with the thought and joined the party. Soon afterwards, as they were passing by a farmyard, they saw a cock perched upon a gate, and screaming out with all his might and main, Bravo, said the ass, upon my word, you make a famous noise. Pray, what is this all about? Why, said the cock, I was just now saying that we should have a fine weather for our washing day, and yet my mistress and the cook don't thank me for my pains, but threaten to cut off my head tomorrow and make broth of me for the guests that are coming on Sunday. Heaven forbid, said the ass. Come with us, Master Chancellor. It will be better, at any rate, than staying here to have your head cut off. Besides, who knows, if we can take care to sing in tune, we may get up with some kind of concert, so come along with us. With all my heart, said the cock. So they all four went on jollily together. They could not, however, reach the great city the first day, so when night came on, they went into a wood to sleep. The ass and the dog laid themselves down under a great tree, and the cat climbed up into the branches, while the cock, thinking that the higher he sat the safer he should be, flew up the very top of the tree, and then, according to his custom, before he went to sleep, looked out on all sides of him to see that everything was well. In doing this, he saw afar off something bright and shining, and calling to his companions, said, There must be a house no great way off, for I see a light. If that be the case, said the ass, we better change our quarters, for our lodging is not the best in the world. Besides, added the dog, I should not be the worse for our bone or two, or a bit of meat. So they walked off together towards the spot where the Chancellor had been seen the light. And as they drew near, it became larger and brighter, till they at last came close to a house in which a gang of robbers lived. The ass, being the tallest of the company, marched up to the window and peeped in. Well, donkey, said the Chancellor, what do you see? What do I see? Replied the ass. Well, I see a table spread with all kinds of good things, and robbers sitting round and making merry. That would be a noble lodging for us, said the cock. Yes, said the ass, if we could only get in. So they consulted together how they should contrive to get the robbers out, and at last they hit upon a plan. The ass placed himself upright on his hind legs, with his 4 feet resting against the window. The dog got upon his back, the cat scrambled up to the dog's shoulders, and the cock flew up and sat upon the cat's head. When all was ready, a signal was given, and they began their music. The ass brayed, the dog barked, the cat mewed, and the cock screamed, and then they all broke through the window at once and came tumbling into the room amongst the broken glass with a most hideous clatter. The robbers, who had not been a little frightened by the ongoing concert, had no doubt that some frightful hobgoblin had broken in upon them and scampered away as fast as they could. The coast once clear, our travellers soon sat down and dispatched what the robbers had left with as much eagerness as if they had not expected to eat again for a month. As soon as they settled and satisfied themselves, they put out the lights and each once more sought out a resting place to his own liking. The donkey laid himself down upon a heap of straw in the yard. The dog stretched himself upon a mat behind the door. The cat rolled herself up on the hearth before the warm ashes. The cock perched upon a beam on top of the house, and as they all were rather tired with their journey, they soon fell asleep. But about midnight, when the robbers saw from far that the lights were out and that all seemed quiet, they began to think that they had all been in too great a hurry to run away, and one of them, who was bolder than the rest, went to see what was going on. Finding everything still, he marched into the kitchen and groped about till he found a match in order to light a candle. And then, espying the glittering, fiery eyes of the cat, he mistook them for live coals and held the match to light it. But the cat, not understanding this joke, sprang at his face and spit and scratched at him. This frightened him dreadfully, and away he ran to the back door. But there the dog jumped and bit him in the leg, and he was crossing over the yard. The ass kicked him, and the cock, who had been awakened by the noise, crowed with all his might. At this, the robber ran back as fast as he could to his comrades, and told the captain how a horrid witch had got into the house and had spit at him and scratched his face with her long, bony fingers. How a man with a knife in his hand had hidden himself behind the door and stabbed him in the leg. How a black monster stood in the yard and struck him with a club, and how the devil sat upon the top of the house and cried out, "Throw the rascal up here." After this, the robbers never dared to go back to the house, but the musicians were so pleased with their quarters that they took up their abode there, and there they are, I dare say, at this very day. The Golden Bird. A certain king had a beautiful garden, and in that garden stood a tree which bore golden apples. These apples were always counted, and about the time when they began to grow ripe, it was found that every night one of them was gone. The king became very angry at this and ordered the gardener to keep watch all night under the tree. The gardener sat his eldest son to watch, but at about 12 o'clock he fell asleep, and in the morning another of the apples was missing. Then the second son was ordered to watch, and at midnight he too fell asleep, and in the morning another apple was gone. Then the third son offered to keep watch, but the gardener at first would not let him, for fear some harm should come to him. However, at last he consented, and the young man laid himself under the tree to watch. As the clock struck 12, he heard a rustling noise in the air, and a bird came flying that was of pure gold, and it was snapping at one of the apples with its beak. The gardener's son jumped up and shot an arrow at it, but the arrow did the bird no harm, only it dropped a golden feather from its tail and then flew away. The golden feather was brought to the king in the morning, and all the council was called together. Everyone agreed that it was worth more than all the wealth of the kingdom, but the king said, "One feather is of no use to me. I must have the whole bird." Then the gardener's eldest son set out and thought to find the golden bird very easily, and when he had gone but a little way, he came to a wood, and by the side of the wood he saw a fox sitting. So he took his bow and made ready to shoot at it. Then the fox said, "Do not shoot me, for I will give you good counsel. I know what your business is, and that you want to find the golden bird. You will reach a village in the evening, and when you get there, you will see 2 inns opposite to each other, one of which is very pleasant and beautiful to look at. Go not in there, but rest for the night in the other, though it may appear to you to be very poor and mean." But the son thought to himself, "What can such a beast as this know about the matter?" So he shot his arrow at the fox, but it missed, and it set up its tail above its back and ran into the wood. Then he went his way, and in the evening came to the village where the 2 inns were, and in one of these were 2 people singing and dancing and feasting, but the other looked very dirty and poor. "I should be very silly," said he, "if I went to that shabby house and left this charming place." So he went into the smart house and ate and drank at his ease, and forgot the bird and his country too. Time passed on, and as the eldest son did not come back, and the tidings were of no heard of to him, the second son set out, and the same thing happened to him. He met the fox, who gave him the same good advice, but when he came to the 2 inns, his eldest brother was standing at the window where the merrymaking was, and called him to come in, and he could not withstand the temptation, but went in and forgot the golden bird and his country in the same manner. Time passed on again, and the youngest son too wished to set out into the wide world to seek for the golden bird. But his father would not listen to it for a long while, for he was very fond of his son, and was afraid that some ill luck might happen to him also, and prevent him coming back. However, at last it was agreed that he should go, for he would not rest at home, and when he came back into the wood, he met the fox, and heard the same good counsel. But he was thankful to the fox, and did not attempt his life as his brothers had done. So the fox said, "Sit upon my tail, and you will travel faster." So he sat down, and the fox began to run, and away they went over stock and stone so quick that their hair whistled in the wind. When they came to the village, the son followed the fox's counsel, and without looking about him went to the shabby inn, and rested there all night at his ease. In the morning came the fox again, and met him, and as he was beginning his journey, and said, "Go straight forward till you come to a castle, before which lie a whole troop of soldiers fast asleep and snoring. Take no notice of them, but go into the castle and pass on until you come to a room, where the golden bird sits in a wooden cage. Close by it stands a beautiful golden cage, but do not try to take the bird out of the shabby cage and put it in the handsome one, otherwise you will repent it." Then the fox stretched out his tail again, and the young man sat himself down, and away they went over stock and stone, till their hair whistled in the wind. Before the castle gate all was as the fox had said, so the son went in and found the chamber where the golden bird hung in a wooden cage, and below stood the golden cage, and the 3 golden apples that had been lost were lying close by it. Then thought he himself, "It will be a very droll thing to bring away such a fine bird in this shabby cage." So he opened the door and took hold of it and put it into the golden cage. But the bird set up such a loud scream that all the soldiers awoke, and they took him prisoner and carried him before the king. The next morning the court sat to judge him, and when all was heard, it sentenced him to die, unless he should bring the king the golden horse, which could run as swiftly as the wind. And if he did this, he was to have the golden bird given him for his own. So he set out once more on his journey, sighing and in great despair, when on a sudden his good friend the fox met him and said, "You see now what has happened on account of your not listening to my counsel. I will still, however, tell you how to find the golden horse, if you will do as I bid you. You must go straight on till you come to the castle, where the horse stands in his stall. By his side will lie the groom fast asleep and snoring. Take away the horse quietly, but be sure to put the old leathern saddle upon him, and not the golden one that is close by it." Then the son sat down on the fox's tail, and away they went over stock and stone, till their hair whistled in the wind. All went right, and the groom lay snoring with his hand upon the golden saddle. But when the son looked at the horse, he thought, "It is a great pity to put the leathern saddle upon it. I will give him the good one," said he. "I am sure he deserves it." As he took upon the golden saddle, the groom awoke and cried out so loud that all the guards ran in and took him prisoner. And in the morning he was again brought before the court to be judged, and was sentenced to die. But it was agreed that if he could bring thither the beautiful princess, he should live, and have the bird and the horse given him for his own. Then he went his way again, very sorrowful. But the old fox came and said, "Why did you not listen to me? If you had, you would have carried away both the bird and the horse. Yet will I once more give you counsel. Go straight on, and in the evening you will arrive at a castle. At 12 o'clock at night the princess goes into the bathing house. Go up to her and give her a kiss, and she will let you lead her away. But take care you do not suffer her to go and take leave of her father and mother." Then the fox stretched out his tail, and so away they went over stock and stone, till their hair whistled again in the wind. As they came to the castle, all was as the fox had said. And at 12 o'clock the young man met the princess going to the bath, and gave her the kiss. And she agreed to run away with him, but begged with many tears that he would let her take leave of her father. At first he refused, but she wept still more, and fell at his feet, till at last he consented. But the moment she came to her father's house, the guards awoke, and he was taken prisoner again. Then he was brought before the king, and the king said, "You shall never have my daughter, unless in 8 days you can dig away the hill that stops the view from my window." Now this hill was so big that the whole world would not take it away. And when he had worked for 7 days and had done very little, the fox came and said, "Lie down and go to sleep. I will work for you." And in the morning he awoke, and the hill was gone. So he went merrily to the king and told him that now it was removed, he must give him the princess. Then the king was obliged to keep his word, and away went the young man and the princess. And the fox came and said to him, "We will have all three, the princess, the horse, and the bird." "Ah," said the young man, "that would be a great thing, but how can you contrive it?" "If you will only listen," said the fox, "it can soon be done. When you come to the king and he asks for the beautiful princess, you must say, 'Here she is.' Then he will be very joyful, and you will mount the golden horse that they are to give you, and put out your hand to take leave of him. But shake hands with the princess last. Then lift her quickly onto the horse behind you, clap your spurs to his side, and gallop away as fast as you can." All went right. Then the fox said, "When you come to the castle where the bird is, I will stay with the princess at the door, and you will ride in and speak to the king. And when he sees that it is the right horse, he will bring out the bird. But you must sit still, and that you say, when you look at it, to see whether it is the true golden bird, and when you get it into your hand, ride away." This too happened as the fox said. They carried off the bird, the princess mounted again, and they rode on to a great wood. Then the fox came and said, "Pray kill me, and cut off my head and my feet." But the young man refused to do it. So the fox said, "I will at any rate give you good counsel. Beware of 2 things. Ransom no one from the gallows, and sit down by the side of no river." Then away he went. Well, thought the young man, it is no hard matter to keep that advice. He rode on with the princess, till at last he came to the village where he had left his 2 brothers. And there he heard a great noise and uproar. And when he saw that the 2 men were his brothers who had turned robbers, so he said, "Cannot they in any way be saved?" But the people said no, unless he would bestow all his money upon the rascals and buy their liberty. Then he did not stay to think about the matter, but paid what was asked, and his brothers were given up, and went on with him towards their home. And as he came in the wood, where the fox first met them, it was so cool and pleasant that the 2 brothers said, "Let us sit down by the side of the river and rest a while, to eat and to drink." So he said, "Yes," and forgot the fox's counsel, and sat down on the side of the river. And while he suspected nothing, they came behind and threw him down the bank, and took the princess, the horse, and the bird, and went home to the king their master, and said, "All this have we won by our labor." Then there was great rejoicing made, but the horse would not eat, the bird would not sing, and the princess wept. The youngest son fell to the bottom of the river's bed. Luckily, it was nearly dry, but his bones were almost broken, and the bank was so steep that he could find no way to get out. Then the old fox came once more and scolded him for not following his advice. Otherwise, no evil would have befallen him. "Yet," said he, "I cannot leave you here, so lay hold of my tail and hold fast." Then he pulled him out of the river and said to him, as he got upon the bank, "Your brothers have set watch to kill you, if they find you in the kingdom." So he dressed himself as a poor man, and came secretly to the king's court, and was scarcely within the doors when the horse began to eat, and the bird to sing, and the princess left off weeping. Then he said to the king, and told him all his brothers' roguery, and they were seized and punished, and he had the princess given to him again. And after the king's death, he was heir to his kingdom. A long while after, he went to walk one day in the wood, and the old fox met him, and besought him with tears in his eyes to kill him, and cut off his head and feet. And at last he did so, and in a moment the fox was changed into a man, and turned out to be the brother of the princess, who had been lost a great many years.